Okay, there's like it's becoming an office. Just big stack of papers here day after day, which is really great. You give me the topics and I can just talk. I don't have to come up with the topics. First two questions. What is Dzogchen? And there is a danger of changing numbers in terms of bumi openings, making the practice goal-orientated. What would you recommend to avoid this? These two together make an excellent case. So what is Dzogchen? Dzogchen literally means a great perfection or great completion. It's just a name, a term for the natural state, and often refers to certain traditions, lineages and teachings, methods that take you to Dzogchen, to great perfection, which is another term for attainment of Buddhahood. And in Buddhahood there are 3 different stages in Buddhahood. Can somebody close the curtain? It's shining directly. A little bit more. That center window. Yeah. Yes, thanks. So, what is Dzogchen? That's what it is. The natural state is Dzogchen. It has different names. In Vajrayana Buddhism there is another one called Mahamudra. Mahamudra, which means a great seal. Not the animal, but the great seal, like great stamp, great achievement. So Mahamudra and Dzogchen are synonyms. That's what it means. There is a danger of changing the numbers in terms of bumi openings, making the practice goal-orientated. Certainly, this danger is in all kinds of paths. And in fact, that danger is also in the paths where they say that they're not changing anything. Yes, the mind, whatever you tell it, it takes it and it wants to have it, you know. But the great thing about, in Theravada there are the so-called 4 paths. They speak of 4 paths. And the first path is the same as, it's called Sotapanna, or stream entry, which is the same as our awakening, first bumi opening. So they are chasing these paths, they are talking about these paths. In the mentioned Mahamudra there are 4 stages. I never remember the second one, but the first one is one-pointedness, the second one is something I don't remember. Third one is one taste, which means sameness in taste of samsara and nirvana. And the fourth one is non-meditation. Non-meditation is another synonym for Ati-yoga, Dzogchen meditation. And then, in Zen Buddhism, especially in Rinzai school that I'm familiar with, this is a Rinzai Zen Buddhist rakusu, although the colors are much more creative. I didn't want to have, as an open heart teacher, I didn't want to have like a plain color, black or blue or brown as they usually are. But in Rinzai Zen Buddhism they are very, goal-orientated. Getting to that first Kensho, and really putting effort to getting there. Doing the practice to get there. And Zen Master Hakuin, who was the greatest Zen Master of the modern times, who lived 300-400 years ago, who revived the whole Rinzai Zen Buddhist school in Japan, he liked to speak about having many kenshos, many awakenings. He spoke of having 18 big kenshos and numerous small ones. 18 big ones. 18 awakenings that are irreversible. So this question that changing the numbers in terms of Bhumi openings, we speak of Bhumi openings. In Zen they speak of Kenshos, in Tibetan Buddhism they speak of Semgo Tropa is the term for, or literally Semgo Tropa, I don't remember what it means, but something like mind opening or something like this. But it is all over Buddhism, these openings. That is something important to understand. It's not only open heart thing, certainly not. But we speak of Bhumi openings, Bhumis. And Bhumis exist in Mahayana Buddhism. They speak of 10 Bodhisattva Bhumis. And then in Vajrayana they also speak of Bhumis. But not in Mahayana or Vajrayana, as far as I know, and I've tried to trace it, I've tried to find it, but today there is no system in Orthodox Buddhism where they map Bhumis like we do. It doesn't exist, but I'm pretty sure that it has been there at some point. Because how else could they come up with the Bhumi, the sutras that speaks about Bhumis and the whole topic of Bhumis? But something that happens with doing the practice and opening the Bhumis is that, of course, each opening matters. Why? Because our mind becomes more and more clear, opening by opening. It really matters. Because our life changes, our way how we perceive things changes, way how we experience, how we receive things changes. Instead of getting irritated and pissed off and anxious or, whatever our favorite habitual patterns were, that changes with openings. With each opening, there is a change. It's called an irreversible shift, because irreversible, the definition of that word is that you don't get back to what you were before. It doesn't get the same as it was before, right? So, just like Hakuin was talking about 18 Kenshos, he was quoting Chinese Zen master Ta Hui when he spoke of 18 Kenshos. Yes, it really matters. And it's fine, the mind tries to grab and make its own kind of, Bhumi openings. It tries to, make it into something. Literally, make it into something. It does that. It has that function. But it happens, it happens with everything. But with each opening it becomes less and less, because the awareness itself, our Buddha nature, becomes more and more evident and you live it more, actual. And when you get to the 11th, your 11th Kensho, then you know perfectly well through your own living experience. When you open that first Mahasiddha Bhumi, this awareness, this Buddha nature becomes your default mode. You still have stuff to work with, you have to perfect all those bhumis that you have opened, but then awareness is your default mode. And it's a really, it's a really, really significant thing. For ourselves. At the moment, I think we have, in Open Heart Practitioners, we have 12 or 13 people who are on Mahasiddha Bhumis. Have gotten there in few years' time. That's a significant number. And the number keeps growing bigger and bigger. Yeah. I asked guys if they wanted to say something about Bhumi openings, and I'll pass the mic. Just, 1 or 2 minutes. You can say something. Carlos.
For me, I was one of those people who actually got caught up in the numbers in the beginning and wanted to very impatiently open the next one, always looking for that. But again, the solution to that is opening bhumis. So it's a kind of a yes and no answer to the question in one sense. Because it doesn't matter that much anymore after you've opened a few of them. It matters less and less. There is less and less hurry about things because things become more effortless. And I think that effortlessness is like a key word here. That you don't have to try to be aware anymore. It's just, or open, or it just happens naturally after a while.
Can you keep it closer? The
Yeah.
mic.
Yeah. But that was it.
Okay. So Carl has 13, all 13 open. Yep, please.
Yeah, I suppose in the beginning, I mean, for me, it felt a bit like chasing. You could maybe use that terminology, but I mean, for me, and I presume it's for everybody else. We want to end our own suffering. We want. That's why we're here. We're not here to kind of fit into some sort of kind of textbook kind of. There is no one. This kind of jargon that you read about. Nothing to attain. I mean, in a sense, of course, there is nothing, but you have to kind of. I feel you have to start somewhere for a start. Like you have to have that. I think the word is the bodhicitta. And I mean, I've always had that strong in me. I've always, and I think anybody that's come over and over to a Dharma Mind retreat, year after year, and they're going, what am I doing this again for? They have to have a strong, sense of the bodhicitta, So I think the mind, loves to hijack this stuff, and I know I have that kind of mind. What did help me in the beginning was, is give, the sense of, just giving it back to Buddha, having that kind of spirit about approaching practice, not that I don't think there's anything wrong with, wishing to attain, the promise that the Buddha, laid out, I really don't, and I think, there's a lot of cultural baggage, I think, in the West, especially around it, and especially in Ireland, like, you know, around anything spiritual, it's like, you know, keep away from him, you know, you might catch it, you know, or, you know, there's this kind of, there's kind of a cynicism, you know, and a kind of a, you know, there tends to be that. That's my feeling around it anyway. If you bring it up, if you start talking about this kind of stuff, you want to, you know, lose friends quickly. You know, talk about harmony, you know, amongst your friends. And, you know, that's what happens. You know, people kind of maybe stop calling you and stuff. And then the right people call you as well, you know, which is, you know, what it should be really, like, you know. So, and for me, going on, you know, through the Boomy openings, and you know, that clarity, you know, you just come, you're more and more. For me, it's like turning up the dimmer switch, you know, turning up on a light, you know, and it gets more and more brighter. You know, the more you stay on the path, and the more you do the practice, and the more openings, you know, and it just feels natural. It feels like, you know, it just feels much more and more than the natural and the right thing to do, you know. So that's what keeps me, you know. You know, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to keep. I want an end to my suffering. You know, that's what keeps me on this path, and it's been amazing and joyous, and you know, it's really, you know, a few words I'd say about it.
So, do I remember right that you were already on the second one when you started open heart practice? Was it in August?
Yeah, in August.
Last August, and now it's 8th or 9th, something.
It's more. There's just been a few.
Okay.
Since.
So 9th, 10th. So what? 7, 8 openings in 3-4 months. 4 months. Great. Pass the mic.
I'd echo a lot of what Carl was saying. It feels wonderful to open Boomies. Basically, it's a bit like most people here have awoken, so you know what it feels like to have that shift in clarity. And opening a Boomy feels like that. It feels like a further shift in clarity. You know, so your default clarity is just tweaked. You know, it's a bit like having, you know, the dimmer switch is a good analogy. Another analogy is the analogy of you've got a TV set, you know, one of those old-fashioned TV sets, and it's not tuned into the channel, and the picture's fuzzy and grainy, there's lots of snow, and you can't really see the picture, and you just tune the TV in a little bit more, and there's more clarity, and then every time, and it's not a sort of temporary clarity, it's the default clarity that you have. Each time you open a Boomy, it's just a little tweak until the picture is really clear. So that's what it feels like, you know, just a kind of a cycle. You open a Boomy and it feels fantastic for maybe a day or two, and there's a lot of gratitude, you know, it feels emotionally like there's a big emotional release, a lot of joy and just peace, and it feels fantastic. And then, you know, you start working on the next one, and you maybe go through a period where it's, you know, things are fine, and then you sort of get to maybe a tricky period where you're sort of working away on something. You know that you can feel like the next Boomy is coming, you know, and it's, you know, it can be a bit challenging. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it just opens, you know, by surprise. That's how it's been for me. And you kind of get a sense of, I think the next one's coming soon, you know. It's, you know, it's a bit like, I don't know, like you're pregnant or something, and you know the baby's coming, but you don't know exactly when it's going to come. And then it just comes, and it's like, wow, the shift in clarity, it's very wonderful. And you know, they are reversible, and I think the practices, I mean, the way, you know, there isn't all that's really required is to just do Tibetan heart yoga. That's what I've done. I've done like Tibetan heart yoga in the morning, maybe the odd session of Guru yoga, and everything else is just taking care of itself, pretty much. And and you do get excited by the prospect of the next room opening. It is, for sure, exciting and wonderful, and it is very life changing. But that's part of the fun of it all, really. It's like, the shifts are so wonderful that it's hard not to get, there's a lot of joy and a lot of excitement. But what's great is that so many other people are opening them as well. You don't get precious about it because like everyone's opening them basically in open heart. Like there's so many practitioners that are basically opening boomies every few weeks, so it's no big deal really, to be honest. That's what I'd say about it, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was well answered question. Next patient. If bhumi shifts/openings are irreversible, does this insight/clarity remain after death and into next life or lives? Oh, good one. I have no clue. How the hell should I know? Well, it was said earlier that if you're not a Buddha, you are a samsaric being. If you are not fully aware 24/7, then you are more or less samsaric. And this puts this present incarnation in human body into special light. You have to get to the Buddhahood before you pass away, or when you pass away, or then there will be some I know the perfect Finnish word, but it will go back. What?
Transmigration. Is that going?
No. It will go back. Reverse. Right. So it's irreversible in this life, but because if we die as samsaric beings, then there are samsaric winds. Being a samsaric being, being deluded being, having selfing left, means that there are uncontrolled winds blowing in your mind. That's why you have random thoughts, impulsive thoughts, compulsive behavior. That's why our sleep in the night is not lucid and clear. Okay? So, irreversibility, well, certainly, like when you open bhumis, have awakenings, have shifts, they are irreversible in this life. And if you get to open Mahasiddha bhumis, it makes like what happens life after life is that in each life we get habits and tendencies. And Dharma practice is also a tendency. It's called liberating karma. Liberating karma, which means connections to Dharma practices and lineages and teachers and masters, they accumulate. So that is very beneficial, also in terms of bhumi openings. But if you want it to be fully irreversible, you have to attain Buddhahood in this life. Otherwise, there will be, after death, there will be some winds blowing. But having said that, we have Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land, Pemako. It's translated into, like the Tibetan name for it is Changdok Palri, copper-colored mountain. So just like Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land, Sukhavati is probably the most well-known Pure Land, meaning a land or a place of life after we leave the physical body and the physical planet. The Pure Land practitioners, there are numerous testimonies of Pure Land practitioners who have witnessed their pet dogs or fellow practitioners or their teachers or students go to that Pure Land after passing away. So Buddhas have their own Pure Lands, and Guru Rinpoche has his own copper-colored mountain or Pemako. And when in the 5 refuge we chant, I take refuge in his Pure Land, it refers to that Pure Land. So it's just like think of a big meditation center where there are Guru Rinpoche is there instructing, Yeshe Chogyal is there, there's a whole bunch of other Mahasiddhas, advanced practitioners, yogis. People love Dharma practice, they enjoy it there, they share things freely there, and that's where you can go. That's where we ask to be taken. But then, if you become a Buddha before you die, then you can go anywhere, because there's no karmic winds blowing you to any of the samsaric realms, demanding rebirth in samsaric realms. So if you become a Buddha, then you can choose where you go. But until then, we humbly ask Guru Rinpoche to take us to his Pure Land. Okay? Does it answer?
Okay.
Yes.
One additional question.
Yes?
Opening the first bhumi is stream entry in other traditions. I thought stream entry was special in some way, in that if somebody died subsequently, you would be a Buddha or something.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. I don't think there's any truth into that. There's, with all respect, yeah, no, I don't think so. What to do when the two-part formula becomes more difficult? Eye center more difficult to focus on. The eye sense more difficult to focus on. Renew your way of doing it. Don't do it the same way as it felt before. If you used the affirmation like very gently, change it. Change the way how you say it. Change it into more focus, more energy, more even aggression to it. Or if you did it aggressively before, say it gently. Okay? But then when the bhumi opening, awakening happens, then it doesn't stick anymore. Regardless of the way how you say it, gentle, aggressive, anything, it doesn't stick. It just echoes in the space. It loses its meaning as it was before. Okay? Are the characteristics of awakening universal? If so, how come some people's descriptions of insight seem more profound and deeper than others? Thinking about Aloka's description about opening first bhumi and other bhumis. That's a good one. Are the characteristics of awakening universal? Yes, the central characteristics are universal. And I've actually studied this. I've talked with, Zen teachers, Theravada teachers, pragmatic Dharma teachers who have a Theravada background, Pure Land Buddhist teachers, they also have awakening, and of course Tibetan Buddhist teachers, and of course Hindu teachers. So yes, it's universal. A few things can affect in how it's experienced. If one doesn't have any meditation training before it happens, it can be quite a blow, you know, a dramatic change. For the better, of course, never for the worse. I've never heard that somebody would want their money back, so to speak, or would want to get back to the old. So, for somebody who doesn't have meditation history, it can be dramatic. But then, if one doesn't start or continue practice, it is likely to, diminish in its moment-to-moment, day-to-day effect of it wanes. Because there's more. So even if you it doesn't grow back, it doesn't reverse, but there is so much other stuff, psychological stuff, that it comes. So that's why it needs to be further expanded, that realization. So not doing prior practice can affect, and on the other hand, if one has done some meditation training, well, let's say that if it's on the other extreme, if somebody has meditated a lot, it's still a shift, and an important shift, but it just won't be as dramatic. But whether it's dramatic or undramatic, doesn't matter. What matters is how you are after that, how your being is different, how your everyday life is different. And there can also be, we speak about opening of bhumis and perfecting of bhumis. So if we think of a plate like we have in the kitchen, like the big plates that we eat, so if we think that a crack in the plate would not be opening, because it still holds water, right? But if we make a 1 millimeter hole in the center of the plate, then the water goes through it. Then it's a proper hole. So a bhumi opening can be 1 millimeter hole. Maybe to some people it's a 1 centimeter hole or 5 centimeter hole. But I think the 5 centimeter holes are quite rare. But that might change. That might explain the change in description. Okay.
So just on that, Kim, can I ask you, the 1 centimeter and the 5 centimeter, when it comes to perfecting the bhumis, does that mean there's a lot more work to be done on the 1 centimeter one rather than the 5 centimeter one?
I didn't quite understand.
When you come to perfect the bhumis, like in open heart, you actually open bhumis 1 to 13, and then one comes back to perfect those bhumis.
Right.
Now, if say bhumi 1 opening, you use the analogy there, like if one was 1 centimeter,
yes,
right, and the other was 5 centimeters, does it mean that perfecting that bhumi is less onerous, or is less to be perfected?
Exactly, yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So what's the difference between sort of going up through the boomies and perfecting in terms of practice? I mean, is it similar in terms of what you're doing, and how do open heart practices direct the intention, if you like, through the boomies as opposed to going out and perfecting one boomie?
Yes, yes. So, yesterday I was talking with someone about reading energies and about reading boomy openings, boomy analysis of another person. So, I'm sure it exists in Tantric Buddhism, but I've seen it happen in Rinzai Zen, where Zen master and student, when they have meditation interview, it's called Sanzen. If the student says that, I think I had a Kensho, the master will look into the eye and see if that's actually happened. They do that. They measure it. And they will tell you whether it's correct or false. I've seen it. So, and I've been falsified. so they have that. I kind of lost my track. The question was about, you were talking about opening them all the way up and then perfecting them, while in other systems they open. What was it?
What's the difference in terms of practice between opening and perfecting?
Okay. So I started to answer different question. My apologies. In terms of practice, well, in Tibetan Heart Yoga we have 3 levels of empowerment. We have 3 levels of techniques that are different from 3 levels of empowerments. You get the first empowerment when you learn Tibetan Heart Yoga 1 level of techniques. You get the second empowerment when you reach 6th bhumi, when you open the 6th, and you receive the third empowerment when you open the first Mahasiddha bhumi, 11th bhumi. What are these 2 second and third empowerments? So in the first, you can find the whole list of Buddha deities from the website, but in the first empowerment there are, 12 in number, 12 different Buddhas. In the second empowerment there is, I don't remember, 6 more. There are more wrathful ones. The piano keys, more bass frequencies. And in the third empowerment there are a few more related to sleep and some more wrathful aspects. So that kind of answers your question. So the techniques stay the same, but the mantra changes because more deities come in. So after Avam there will be 2 other syllables. 1 more syllable in second empowerment and 2 more syllables in third empowerment. Yeah. But technically it's still the same beginning mantra, same nadi practice, same chakra technique. You just use different mantra with it.
And once you've opened all of them, and then you're in the perfecting, is it the same practice, or is there a 4th practice then?
No, it's the same practice.
So you
Can
continue
you
to
go back to the first Tibetan Heart Yoga 1 and just go through the thing again, just in more detail? Is that possible?
Sorry? What?
In terms of perfecting, so if you've opened the first bhumi and carried on, when you come back to the first bhumi to perfect it? Okay, now I understand. You don't have to go back to the first bhumi to perfect it. You just do the practice, do all 3
the mantras of the third empowerment, and it will take care of its own. Yeah. Yeah. But it does seem like it perfects 1 second in a logical order. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Takes me half an hour to read it. I read on Open Heart website, you have taken instructions from persons whose name I have never heard of. I thought they were living persons. Then I found most of them were dead from over 1,000 years. How did they communicate with you? How did they make their wishes known? How did Guru Rinpoche make known to you the Avam mantra and the fact it was a compression of the blessings of other Mahasiddhas? And how did you know which ones? This is a good one. So, how did they communicate with you? I spoke about this with somebody yesterday or day before. So I'll just tell it briefly. So when I was a little boy, I grew up in a family where my father was an alcoholic, and because of that, it was miserable in our family. It was challenging, and the emotional feel of our family, of course, was greatly affected by that. But not only our family, it was also the greater family, relatives using alcohol a lot, and because of that doing stupid and crazy things in front of kids. And also, so I felt this suffering in my family, with my relatives who we often saw, and also, everybody in the small town where I grew. The small town quite close to the Russian border in eastern Finland, old mining town. So I used to feel this anguish and this heaviness from the surroundings, and often, like a couple of times a week, it got so heavy that I just spontaneously walked into my sister's and my bedroom. I sat on the bedside and started praying. Nobody had taught me that. I started praying, and I prayed for my own sake, then for the sake of my family members, then for the sake of my relatives, and it kept expanding. And always when I did this, the room was filled with light. I thought about it later on that it probably wasn't the light as we are seeing light from those ceiling lights, but inner light in my eyes and in my inner light. So this immense light and immense peace with it. And I'm not exaggerating it, I'm actually trying to convey the experience, what I actually felt. So I'm not romanticizing it. But it was like I did the prayer and bang, my problems were gone. And I also used to do this breathing practice, deeply inhaling, then holding the breath, and deeply exhaling. Nobody taught it to me, but I did it spontaneously. And instant relief. So I started doing that spontaneously when I was, 3-4 years old, and I kept doing it, that sitting thing on the bedside, until I was maybe 7, 8, something like that. But when I stopped that prayer thing, at some point, I became a boy, and then my mother got remarried, so the problem wasn't that bad anymore. so I probably because of that I stopped doing that prayer thing. But sometimes this immense light and peace and grace would come, and it would happen few times a week, every week, and I didn't give any special attention to it. It never occurred to me to ask about it from somebody or tell it to somebody. It just kept happening. And another thing that kept happening from my childhood, when I was a small kid, until I was already practicing Zen then, and tantric practices also. What kept happening is this, what I later found out to be cessation, nirodha. In Buddhism they speak about cessation, which means that the whole of your mind, all these layers, get switched off for a moment and then it switches back on. They usually last half a second, 2 seconds, very brief. But the effect, the experience, is like the drop into that cessation is very dramatic. It's like, what was that? Am I going crazy? Many times I thought that, God damn, I'm going crazy. I didn't know what it was, so I was a bit concerned about it, sometimes scared about it. But that fear or anxiety about it didn't stay. It was just momentary concern. So fortunately it didn't develop into a psychological issue. I'm just kidding. It couldn't develop into that because it's a cessation. I just didn't know what it was. So fast forward to when I had been practicing tantric practices after years in Zen. I had been practicing tantric practices for some time, maybe like a couple of months. I knew about Babaji and this Guru Yoga principle that I mentioned. I was invoking Babaji's presence all the time. And then one day when I was doing that, repeating Babaji's name, it suddenly hit me. It was Babaji's presence. Ever since my childhood, that lights that went on, it was a presence of a Mahasiddha. So it must have happened added up from 3-4 years old, few times a week, couple of decades, many times. But I was like 28 when I realized that I had been visited by these non-physical masters, Babaji mainly, I think, but also others. Up to this day, I haven't checked what was the actual group or Mahasiddhas who came to meet me, but Babaji and others. Guru Rinpoche was there also. So, of course, Zen training doesn't have any of that mystical side. Even though some Zen masters have had experiences like that with some Buddhas like Amitabha or Avalokiteshvara or Shakyamuni, or with some deceased Zen masters of the previous generations. So in Zen that is rare, it's not talked about. In Vajrayana Buddhism, and it's much more colorful in that sense. Yogis and yoginis, adepts, practitioners, they do have all kinds of visions and visitations of past masters who come to give them a blessing and come to give them instructions. Perhaps in some problem, a barrier that they experience, then they show up and show you how to deal with it. So one of my closest teachers, physical ones, was Sivakami, who I talked about yesterday. And although she never allowed me to go visit her in flesh, we were in constant correspondence. I have all the emails that we changed still stored. It's 600 A4s altogether. But even though we didn't meet physically, I could feel her from Hawaii. I knew it was a living person. So Sivakami was really skilled in this mystical side of Dharma, and as I said, she received a lot of instructions from non-physical as well as physical teachers and masters. So she was the main one who kind of gave me advices about it, filled in the basics, gave me some details so that I had enough confidence myself to have a connection myself to non-physical masters. So I discussed with few non-physical masters from the Kriya Yoga lineage. I started tantric practice in December 2006, and the first time I talked with them was maybe August or September 2007, so a little more than 10 years ago. And there it just started. It wasn't, from the beginning, it didn't feel to me as somehow, really special or somehow, totally out of the usual. Because I had been visited by these masters for, over 2 decades already. So, maybe that's because it didn't feel strange at all. And so the question, how did they communicate with you? What is most important about Guru Yoga is the essential transmission that you get. When you invoke the master to you, ask him or her to come to you, and when they come, it changes the way you are. Your awareness comes to the foreground, and your mental stuff, subsides to the background. And that is the most important thing. That is absolutely the essential thing. But then, it's possible to discuss with them, change ideas, telepathically, through the transmission of thought. Just like I'm transmitting thoughts with you now through physical sounds, the same can be done as a mental discussion. And there are a number of open heart practitioners who have that telephone line open. What is really important to know about that is that, like we were just talking about getting carried away by these bhumi openings, having more and more, the mind can begin to fantasize about it, discussing with master, or when you get the first instruction, even if it's a very simple one, you might make it something big. It's important to keep your mind clear and silent, not get carried away if that happens. You know, we all are chosen ones, not just one of us. so, but as I said, the most important thing is the mind transmission. This transmission of when the master comes close to you, or if you invite him to your body, to your heart, actually come to your body, you know, that is the most important. But how did they communicate with you? Just like I communicate with you now. How did they make their wishes known? By telling me. At some point then, when I met my present wife, Pau, her full name is Pauliina, but her nickname is Pau, just Pau. She had been a student of mine for about 2.5 years before I was still then married to my first wife, and then we got divorced, and then we met in some event with Pau and we started going out, and very early on from our relationship, you know, we were doing the same practice, and I was already, you know, I had gotten a lot of instructions non-physically, and she just also started to get them spontaneously. It wasn't planned, and then that developed, her practice developed, and like her ability of, or her skill that hasn't really been cultivated through a certain system or certain practices. She just has this ability to the masters or the deities can use her physical body like it was their own body. Some of you, John and Carlos, have actually experienced this, that when Pau, it's not a trance state, that is important. She doesn't go into some, trance, which is, by the way, done in some schools of Tibetan Buddhism. They have these trance mediums, but that's not what Pau does. She's fully aware and conscious of it, just like you are aware and conscious of doing Rushen, which kind of happens in your own body, but you're fully aware of it. Not, you get it what I mean. So, masters, all of those in Mahasiddha family, have come to her body and given instructions, and sometimes they come to me and give me instructions, though it's not that physical. There are videos of Pau in YouTube also, if you haven't met her in person yet, where she does all these what look like temple dances. Indian temple dances, they have very like a certain kind of movements. She has never exercised any of those dances. She has never trained in that kind of dancing. It's all spontaneous. It's the Buddha's deities doing it through her. Okay? So, and that is actually something, I mentioned Rushen. That is just Rushen in very advanced form. In the beginning, it's just, chaotic release. Then it develops, it starts kind of taking shape, it becomes more harmonious, and then at a later stage it can become this eloquent expression, like physical poetry. I'm pretty sure that that's how originally these temple dances in India and in Tibet, Buddhists do that a lot in Tibet still these days. They learn the steps, And in Japan, in Shintoism, they have these really nice dances where they take really small steps and stuff like this. I'm pretty sure that it all started spontaneously. There was somebody who could bring in the gods or Buddhas. We have already discussed with Pau when she could come and meet people here in UK and Ireland. Of course, Finns have already met her, and I often talk and I give verbal instructions, but the way how she works with open heart practitioners and students is that because it's Padmasambhava in her body, or Yeshe Tsogyal, that she just transmits their blessings directly, often touching the forehead or heart, or clearing the aura or something like this. But again, it's not that special. It's out of the ordinary in our culture. In the Orient, it wouldn't be that much out of the ordinary, because there are all kinds of, trance mediums, shamans, Buddhist lamas, Buddhist teachers who do stuff like that, who are capable of stuff like that. I just wanted to say that it's not actually that, it's not special in that sense. It's just the natural state as the guru coming through, or natural state as the deities coming through. How did Guru Rinpoche make known to you the Avam mantra and the fact it was a compression of the blessings of other, it says Mahasiddhas, but compression of the blessings of Buddhas, it should be, these Buddha deities. If I get this question right. Yes. So, by telling us. And all of the deities that we have, in the Open Heart blog, I have a almost complete list of all the deities that we have received empowerment from with Pau since 2013, I think. And the list is, it's like 200 names, 200 different deities. So, and the ones that we have in Tibetan Heart Yoga are included there. So, we have received the empowerment of the deities each one by one. Like an empowerment from Guru Rinpoche, one by one. And how did I know which ones? That is a good one, because it often happened in the way that the energy would come to her, she would pass it to me, and I would have to figure out which deity is it, what's the name of it, by feeling the energy of it. So, for example, if I passed you a charge that was pure, equanimity is the base of it, and it has very, lively and compassionate tone to it. And you would feel this equanimity and compassion, like the compassion is really fortified, stands out in that vibration. And it's different from another empowerment where you only have, for example, the equanimity. But in this one, the compassion is there. And I would sit, experience it, and the name for the deity would come sooner or later. Usually in a couple of minutes. Oh, it's Avalokiteshvara. It's the Buddha of compassion. That's how. Maybe I'll say something general. I think this is enough questions. There are a few more notes there, but I will just say something about this in general, about receiving teachings non-physically. Now that we have grown up as human beings, and we are grown-ups, when we grow up, we very easily only like we easily start to think of things. We get accustomed to our human life, to our human form, and the things and circumstances we have in our life. We get accustomed, we get habituated to being human beings. But that is just one story. I remember this one Tibetan Buddhist yogi who's already now passed away, like 15 years ago he passed away, who said that he was rocking back and forth in a rocking chair with this funny smile on his face, and he said that, oh, I remember so many lives, that it's been so many in all kinds of forms, you know, being an animal and being a plant and being a hungry ghost and being a god and being a human for so many lives, with this funny cringe. And he's just saying this and saying that, but you know, there's no point in me telling you that I've lived million lives in different forms, because you wouldn't believe it. I'll just say that I've lived a long life in this life. In Buddhism, we speak of transmigration, one life to another, the 6 main realms and many other sub-realms, going round and round, as it says in the song, going round and round. I don't remember which song, but I'm sure it says that somewhere in some song. But that's what actually happens. And I'm not telling you that that is what has happened to me or what has happened to you. If you want to know if it has happened, dive into the practice and find out. Remember who you have been, where you have been, with whom you have been. Some people remember without any practice, remember their previous lives. To some people, it kind of opens up through some spiritual event or practice that they verify through their own experience that yes, the transmigration going around in samsara, it's actually real. They remember. Just like you remember that you had lunch 2 hours ago. So I would say that if you don't remember, don't say that transmigration is not true. But also, if you don't remember, keep your mind open. maybe you will remember something. If you have the wish to remember, to know, we are entitled to ask that, is Buddhism, is this theory of samsara, is it actual? Is it true? We all are entitled to find out. I don't remember what I was talking about. The topic.
General point about communicating with non-physical being.
Oh, yes. So, I said yesterday, I think it was the last thing I said in my Dharma talk, that there was a question of why Padmasambhava is the guru, and I was talking about the purpose of open heart. Why create another training system? And I said in the talk that because there is a need for it, and because me and my wife and obviously others in open heart practitioners, they have to have the karmic connection to Guru Rinpoche for it to catch fire, do you understand that? So that karma, that karmic connection, I won't speak of my previous lives. I remember many of them, not all of them, but I don't want to mention names because it would be strange. It is enough that I know myself, and it would also feel like, if I said that I've been this or that, it would feel like a claim that nobody else can verify. Well, maybe somebody would be able to verify that, but I don't want to get into that. So, in Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, they have, well, this is actually, should I talk about this? Maybe I just say that, as you know, there are people in all religions and spiritual traditions, people who have received teachings and instructions, maybe wrote a book about it, wrote it down, told about it to others, shared it. It happens in all traditions. In Christianity, there are the Desert Fathers who have met Jesus, or some of the disciples, Mother Mary, and they write some prayers or something, some teachings. It is in Islam, in Sufism, it happens in Taoism, in Hinduism, and also in Buddhism. This kind of people who can bring out some stuff from non-physical masters. But it also needs to be said that like channeling just some stuff from some spirit entity is not at all same as practicing Guru Yoga and receive instructions from a Mahasiddha Guru. Completely different thing. So to be able to do that, receive teachings and be asked to pass them to others, you have to have close relationship with that master. And in Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, these people who do that are traditionally called Dharma treasure revealers, tertons. Terton is the Tibetan word. Terma is the Dharma treasure, and Terton is the person who brings it out to others. Padmasambhava is the founder of the Nyingma school, by the way. I think that is enough. I already see you, god damn, keeps babbling and babbling. Let's sit for 2 minutes before taking a break.